Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to another week of the Gita. We're on chapter 12, which is another one of my favorite chapters. Chapter 12 is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga. The yoga of devotion, devotional service. This is a very important chapter. It's the shortest chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And it's also the day after Govardhana Puja. Very, very wonderful ceremony and holiday. We'll talk a little bit about that. But before we do anything, we'll start with some Krishna Kirtan, led by Kelly and the Burlington crew.
Jai. Do you want to play the Mridanga?
Sure.
I'll bring it to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sweet souls, Haribol. So come into your comfortable seat. Take a few deep breaths. Begin to land, arrive. Take a deep breath in through your nose, filling up. Open your mouth, exhale, let it go. And chant these opening prayers, this invocation, this honoring of all of our teachers, the acharyas who have walked this path before us, bestowing the light of knowledge upon us, removing the darkness of ignorance. We honor all spiritual teachers of all spiritual paths, of all spiritual lineages. And allow these opening prayers to be like the rains of grace, descending down and washing away whatever may distract you from this next hour plus. Recommitting again and again to this transcendental knowledge, to this transcendental sound vibration, to remembering your spiritual nature. Take a deep breath and fill up.
Prabhu Nityananda
Hari Bol, everyone. Hare Krishna. Great to be with all of you. So I'll speak a little bit about Govardhan Puja. That was yesterday, very special holiday. When Krishna was a young boy in Vrindavan, he convinced his father to set aside the sacrifice that was being performed for the demigod Indra and to worship Govardhan Hill instead. And in this way, he manifested himself in the deity form, in a form as this hill that's still there in Govardhan, in Vrindavan, India. And it's actually an incarnation of Krishna. So sometimes devotees will collect one stone from Govardhan Hill and worship it as a deity. And Govardhana, he told his father that we should have a big feast. We should offer this Govardhan deity all the most wonderful food and then feed everybody. So this is a tradition that we follow. On this day, we feed Krishna and then distribute liberally the prasadam, especially sweets. And Govardhan, when this pastime was happening, Indra became very jealous, and so he sent clouds with massive storms to inundate and flood Vrindavan. And as part of the pastime, Krishna went under the hill and lifted it up with one pinky finger of his left hand and invited everybody underneath with him. So for 7 days and 7 nights, everyone, no matter what their relationship was with Krishna, stayed with him, and they got to be with him night and day. So Govardhan is also prayed to, Govardhan Hill is prayed to for the opportunity to bring us into the inner circle, to give us the association of Krishna's intimate devotees, and for his inclusivity and his generosity for bringing everyone closer to him, because that's what he did, and that's what he does. So these are some of the moods and ideas and feelings around Govardhana Puja, which was celebrated yesterday. It always happens during this Kartik month. So it's a very special day. And I just asked to speak a couple of words about that before we start. And so reviewing from last week.
Thank you for that. We did our own little Govardhan Krikram around a little carrot halva date cashew mountain that we made.
Wonderful.
And I just wanted to leave a little space before the Gita, if anyone had any questions about that, about Govardhan Hill or Govardhan Puja, this would be a wonderful person to ask. Samyaprasa.
So I've always seen the picture. So now it's good to know the content picture
Of Govardhan Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the material.
Shows up in the Bhakti art a lot.
Yeah. Oh, of Krishna lifting the hill. Yeah. And then in the video that I sent around in the Brilliant Bhakti WhatsApp group yesterday, it's like, the hill itself doesn't necessarily look like anything spectacular to the material eye, right? But it's this it's the spiritual eye, when you can see through the spiritual eye, that it's like so grand. So things are never quite what they seem. So thank you.
All right. So moving back into Bhagavad Gita, we're picking up in the 12th chapter. So we'll take a little bit of review from last week. Anything that stood out, any of what we talked about in the class, or from your own readings of the chapter, and from the comments that you had or others had in the WhatsApp thread. Let's get a couple of reflections. What was chapter 11 about, or any point that stood out for you?
Mel has a reflection.
I have been thinking a lot about how when Krishna says, "Oh, therefore I give you divine eyes," and so similar to what you just said about seeing with your spiritual eye, I've been thinking so much about this since we talked about this, and then I was reading about it, and verse 7 was something that I've been actually really thinking a lot about, and it was he says, "O Arjuna, whatever you wish to see, behold at once in this body of mine. This universal form can show you whatever you now desire to see, and whatever you may want to see in the future. Everything, moving and non-moving, is here completely in one place." And it makes me think a lot about how what we actually desire to see, like whether our heart desires it or our mind desires it, is what we're able to see. And so sometimes when we can't fully see, like there's something that we're not fully aware of yet. Like that's something that I'm like learning about in my own practice of just like, sometimes I get clouded, or like life happens and things happen and it just like drags me down a little bit. And then I can't see Krishna as clearly. And it's because like what I actually am wanting to see, like my mind is wanting to see, is not like, it's not fully aligned. And so what I can see is what I actually am trying to see, which is, it's an interesting concept to really, really think about and like meditate on and hold really closely. And so I've been reading a lot about that in this chapter. Beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, the first thing that starts is we have an intention, a desire to see in a certain way, to move in a certain direction, and Krishna reciprocates with that. And here for his pure devotee, for Arjuna, whose qualification is his intimate connection with Krishna and bhakti, that Arjuna has a desire to see the universe, and Krishna reciprocates with that, because he's standing there in the middle of a battlefield. What can he do with his little, 2 eyes? When Krishna gives him the vision to reciprocate with that desire. Nice. Any other reflections?
I have a reflection. Yeah. It's kind of a little bit twofold, but so actually I listened to this class just like a couple of days ago. And actually that morning I read, just so happened that the next chapter of the Krishna book for me was when Krishna reveals his universal form to Mother Yashoda. And that was just like a fun little happening that happened for me in the same day. But just within that, it has me really thinking, like, not so much about seeing Krishna in like the literal sense, but more of that real like support around the idea that Krishna will only like show us, whether it's himself or information, that strong sense of this is all really descending and we're not approaching, we're just receiving. And I think it was something maybe you said at the very end of the recording, that we're here to act in a way that Krishna would want to see us. Like how is our behavior, what Krishna is seeing, qualifying us to then like see him. So it's something that I've been sort of sitting with today. And then I had listened to a recording from, I think it was like a few classes ago, and I had shared with you today that I'm finding these connections between mantra I was taught many, many years ago, and just now, like today, several years later, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this mantra was related to the Upanishads. And feeling a little bit of like, well, how come he didn't tell me then? And then just now it's like, well, I absolutely was not ready to whether hear that or see that and understand. So it's sort of all melting together in really, really sweet ways.
Thank you. Yeah, that quote that I just kind of quoted Srila Prabhupada's guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who said, just kind of like almost like a little summary of what I just said. He said, don't try to see God, try to act in such a way that he wants to see you. The idea of like, not that it's a bad thing to want to seek the Lord, the divine, but don't try to like pierce that veil with your own power. Try to attract him, that I want you, and he can sense that wanting, and through your heart and through what you're doing with your service to show that heart. And as for the other point of like, yeah, we see what we need to see when Krishna realizes we're ready. I've recognized this as true over the years in many ways, and one of them is, reading like Bhagavad Gita. Somebody could read the Bhagavad Gita and be like, yeah, okay, I read that book, but it's not like a novel where you read it and it's done. Even a really great novel, you can read it more than once. What to speak of Bhagavad Gita, where there's actually a relationship. If you're approaching it in a mood of service, you're serving Prabhupada's purpose, you're serving Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield, you're serving these messages, then your realization of what's happening and your what Krishna is going to help you see in that reading will always be different. Like literally every time, it will be different. You could read the same verse every day if you wanted to, And if your sincerity is there, it will become fresh and fresher and fresher, and new things will come up. So that's a function of spiritual reality. Whereas there's only so many times you can watch, like, whatever your favorite movie is or favorite book. It's not a material thing. So there's a relationship that Krishna is like, okay, now you've changed, and now you've grown, and so you're ready for this thing too that was already there, but you couldn't see it then. So yeah, definitely true. Any other reflections on chapter 11? Yes, Allison.
I actually just have a clarifying question, if you
Mhm.
can. In one of the purports, a number 51, just at the end, it says a pure devotee is not confused by misguiding commentaries on Bhagavad Gita because he knows what is what. So I was just wondering, what would be like a misguiding commentary or foolish commentators? I've seen that a few times that he says that in some of the purports, and I was just wondering if.
Sure. So just glance at the purport, 1151. Right. So the context is that Arjuna asks Krishna to see the universe. Krishna grants him that. Arjuna has this oh wow moment, and he prays with reverence. And then he basically realizes, like, but I really want you. Show me your sweet form again as Krishna. And Krishna reciprocates with that. And then Arjuna becomes composed. And that's what the verse is about, how he sees that original form of Krishna and he becomes composed. And so Prabhupada's talking in the purport there about misunderstandings about Krishna. So Bhagavad Gita has many translations and many commentaries. One political leader translated and commented on Bhagavad Gita as having to do with Indian independence from Britain, because that was very important to some people at a certain time. It's like a very temporary kind of situation. So he presented Bhagavad Gita in that light. Other people translated Bhagavad Gita with their own ideas, this way or that way. And one of the main misunderstandings that's there, Krishna talks about in the 7th chapter. He says, sometimes people, here's verse 24, sometimes people think that I was impersonal before, and I've temporarily assumed this personality of Krishna. But that's not right. He says that. Basically, that's not so. They don't see my real nature. 724. And he calls it out in the Bhagavad Gita itself. And still, many people continue to interpret Bhagavad Gita that way. So Srila Prabhupada is talking in that purport, 1151, about how the nature of Krishna as a person is up for debate for those who are like trying to debate about him or figure him out or have their own agenda when they're translating and commenting. However, he says a pure devotee is not confused by such misguiding commentaries. There's a pure devotee being somebody who's applying the practice of devotional service purely without any intention of trying to get something back from their service for material comfort or for figuring Krishna out. They're actually just receiving whatever comes downward. And that pure devotional service is what attracts Krishna to reveal his personal form. So that means that such a person is not confused when someone says, oh, I think Krishna is just like, the impersonal everything that like takes a human form for a little while. A pure devotee is like, nah, that's not my realization. That's not what Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita. That's not what my practice is showing me, Otherwise, what we can see is that the history of Bhagavad Gita is that there have been so many translations, and before the devotional centered, bhakti centered translations and commentaries became widely available in the later part of, like 40, 50 years ago now, thanks to Srila Prabhupada, many people just approached Bhagavad Gita as kind of cool, but didn't really do much for them to change their life and their heart. And afterwards, or whenever there was a devotionally authentic and humble and truthful presentation of Bhagavad Gita, if one is also truthful and receptive to that message, then it does touch the heart. So Prabhupada's talking about that. He talks a little more about it in the introduction, like the very beginning of the introduction, where he says, a mother of one of my students approached me and asked me what do I think or what can I recommend as a translation of Bhagavad Gita? And I can't recommend any of them because there's so many different weird ideas out there. So I presented this one. So you can read more there about that. But as you pointed out, it's a theme because he knew this and he was not impressed. All right.
Shamya, I have a question
Yes.
around that too. like a point and a question, because I know I imagine you know the answer, but there's even, as you were just speaking, that so many different commentaries say like that Krishna is impersonal and just like, you know, the universal consciousness. But yet in which chapter is it where he says, maybe chapter 13, something like this, where he says me, like will come to me. Like he says this many, many times. Me is said, I can't remember the number of times in the Gita, but more than 10, I think, times where he's saying like those who understand will come to me. And if it was an impersonal form, how could that be?
Yeah, the Sanskrit is very clear. And actually, this is a perfect segue to chapter 12, because one of the best examples of that is right at the beginning of chapter 12. You see, again, moving to chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. Again, the beginning and ending of chapters are very important. Krishna ended the last chapter by saying, you can come to me by practice of pure devotion and by being friendly to all living entities and doing your work for me, which he said before many times in the Bhagavad Gita. And the 12th chapter, now, the context is Arjuna just saw the universe, like this big impersonal feature, right? All time, space, death, life, fire, light, darkness, all these kind of abstractions. And he's also realized Krishna in his personal form. So he begins the chapter like this. This is chapter 12. I'll share the screen so you can see. Bhakti Yoga. One second. Yeah. Arjun uvacha evam satata yukta ye bhaktastvam paribhasate ye chapyaksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittama. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in their devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Right? Arjuna just flat out asked this question. What's a better path for me, for anybody? Again, the Sanskrit is very clear. Bhaktas tvam paripasate. Those who serve you with bhakti, personal form. Ye aksharam. Akshara means unmanifest, that which cannot be perceived by the senses, the unmanifest, the Brahman, the impersonal. And Krishna answers. I'll give you one guess what he says. Share it here. Krishna very directly answers it here. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mayavesha Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Pariupetas Te Me Yukta Tamamata. Those who fix their minds on my personal form, again, Maya means on me, directly, and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be the most perfect. That this is the Sanskrit is yukta tama, most perfect in yoga. Because the question Arjuna is asking is not like, which ones are cooler or which ones are better in abstraction? What's a better kind of yoga? What's a better path? And so Krishna is saying, yukta tama, the best path is those who worship me directly, personally. So he's answering this very clearly that, you've just seen the universe. And remember at the beginning of the 11th chapter class, I talked about how some yogis, after great struggle for so many years of purifying the mind and performing austerities, will see the universe in terms of that it's actually connected to the divine. They'll have that impersonal vision. But it's very difficult. And Arjuna just got it just like that because Krishna granted it to him. So it is something you can try to do. However, Krishna says, not as good. And he elaborates on that. He doesn't just say that and drop it. He continues. He gives reason. So first in verses 3 and 4, he says that if you worship the unmanifested, you approach the impersonal, you can eventually come to me. However, in verse 5, he says, Klesho tkataras teresham avyakta saktachitasam. Klesha means difficulty, pain, trouble. He says this kind of path is very troublesome. Avyakta higatir dukkam dehavad piravapite. That for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. It's unnatural. It's very difficult. You can't wrap the material mind around that which doesn't have any form and that which is completely non-personal. And yet it's something one can do. And Krishna even said that if you do that, after a great deal of time, you can successfully qualify yourself to see me. He said in the 7th chapter that Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gyanavam Mam Prapadyate. After many, many births, one who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me. That's 7:19. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sadurlabha. Such a great soul recognizes that the Supreme Person is actually everything, and they surrender to me. Such a great soul is very rare, he says, 7:19. So there is that like gradual path. You can, approach the impersonal. However, klesha, dukkha, 2 words he uses in 12.5, say this is difficult and troublesome. He doesn't advise it. Since Arjuna has asked, what's the best? Krishna says, better you just do the bhakti thing. We see from Arjuna's reaction to the universe that it was disturbing for him. When he had that spiritual vision that let him see the universe with life, death, all the different living entities rushing into the blazing, fiery mouth of Krishna in the universal form, that was a lot. It was not particularly pleasing. It was disturbing for his mind. So we get a sense of that difficulty. And Krishna, and Arjuna rather, becomes settled and satisfied again when he sees Krishna in his personal form, as he is. And so Krishna is speaking to that now in the 12th chapter. That, Srila Prabhupada, he put it this way. He said, the science of bhakti, the science of Bhagavad Gita is simple for those who are simple. And it's complicated for those who want to complicate things, right? He mentioned in one place that sometimes those who write misleading commentaries or are obsessed with like finding a gimmick or trying to like believe that they have an edge on spiritual life, it's like somebody who says, if you say to me, touch your nose, and I say, oh, easy, I'll just go like this. For those who can't see, arcing my head all the way around my head and say, why don't you just touch your nose like that? Why do you have to make it so complicated? Why would you want to have that special gimmicky system? But there's a certain amount of ego in that, like, oh yeah, I have the actual thing. I have the thing that no one else has. See, when Krishna makes it really easy, when someone makes something really easy and simple, you don't value it. You overlook it. You take it for granted. Yeah, but what else is there? Is the grass greener somewhere else? What if I performed, Ashtanga yoga for 50 years in a jungle? Isn't that better than just chanting Hare Krishna like you silly people, you silly sentimental bhakti yogis? No, it's not. You don't have to take my word for it. Krishna says so himself, the very goal of our practice. But there's a way in which, if we're simple, we're like, okay, you say practice bhakti, I'm down, I'll do it. And so that's kind of coming up here, is that Krishna is saying bhakti is better. But it's so simple because Krishna was right there the whole time. It's easy to overlook him. But because Arjuna has this mature relationship with bhakti, and his memory has been jogged around that, he's actually become convincing. And yeah, you're right. Actually, yes, I am your devotee. He's taking that seriously. And he's asking these questions of Krishna. And Krishna's saying, yeah, better you just worship me personally. That's the simplest path and the best. And so after saying in 12.5 that, yeah, it's really difficult doing the impersonal, he gives a promise in 12.6 and 7. He actually presents some reciprocation to Arjuna that, yeah, impersonal is difficult and not advisable. However, 6 and 7, I'll share the verse. However, ye tu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matpada ananyena eva yogena mang dhyayantu upasate tirsamaham samuttarta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavami nachirat partha mayove shita chetasam. However, those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, Arjuna, for them, I deliver them from the ocean of birth and death. So he's saying, but if you focus on me, I will take care of you. I'll help you get over this entire material existence. The qualification is you work for me, you give your activities to me, you're devoted to me, you think about me. The same things he said earlier, think about me, be devoted to me.
It's a very, very reasonable offer.
It's a great offer, and Krishna is making that offer, and it is an offer. It's not a demand, notably, because Arjuna asks what's better, and Krishna says, well, this is better, and this is why. Because the other path is difficult, but this path, I take care of you myself. This is, one of the basis for what I've been saying all along, that bhakti means, Krishna's holding our hand, and we can't fall down, that he's taking care of us. This is the same kind of mood all over and over and over again in Bhagavad Gita, that if you think of me, you work for me, you practice bhakti, and you're devoted to me, I take care of you. Here he's saying, I carry you across the ocean of birth and death. I'll pause here for a second because this is a natural break point in the chapter. The next few verses are connected in a different way. So I'll take any reflections on these first few verses, these ideas of Arjuna asking what's a better form of practice, approaching the impersonal, approaching the personal, and Krishna's answer, and his substantiating that answer, why the impersonal isn't so good, why the personal practice is better, and his promise, his offer. Any thoughts on that? Any reflections? Anything that stood out? Yeah.
Say that again.
I appreciate how direct it is. Very direct.
It is very direct. It's simple for the simple. Yeah, that in a couple few verses, Krishna, if you take it, he saves us a lot of time, saves us a lot of energy. That's why I always present Bhagavad Gita like, well, here's, and this is how it was presented to me, which appealed to me. Here's the accumulation of wisdom from a spiritual culture. And the goal of that wisdom, Krishna, the divine, is saying, try it. Just give it a shot. Say, what do you have to lose? What if he's right? What if he's actually honest about his offer? What if you actually get to experience some of that in the beginning? As bhakti is, the beginning of 9 chapters said, it's it's directly experienced. So if it's directly experienced, then why don't I just sincerely try practicing at whatever level I have right now, a little bit, and see if he reciprocates with me? Because, as you pointed out, it's a terrific offer. It's a really great offer. Why not try it? And that's kind of the overarching theme of Bhagavad Gita. Our Krishna's like, listen, I got you. I know this is really scary, but I'm actually with you, and you have nothing to fear. Just try thinking, try practicing bhakti, try being my devotee. And of course, he's saying that to all of us too. Thank you, Justin.
Prabhu, it reminds me of the conversation we had a few weeks back about how, because we're in Kali Yuga, that this bhakti practice is the best practice for yoga to reach the supreme. Then, and Krishna reiterates it, like, you can go these other routes. It's really hard and very troublesome, but this is just the best path. Is basically to be the quote unquote sonic yogis, right? So it's just reminiscent. It repeats itself in this one.
Definitely. And so Kali Yuga, in Sanskrit, Kali Yuga, it means the age that we're living in. And that age started a few thousand years ago, and it's defined by increasing quarrel, shorter lifespans, more distractions, and more hypocrisy, more disturbed mind. So the impersonal, like even the practice of trying to purify the mind enough to recognize that there is something spiritual beyond all of matter, without approaching that personal form of the divine, that requires tremendous austerity, simplicity, truthfulness. Yogis practiced it with celibacy for many, many lifetimes, or longer lifetimes than we have. And this is not practical in this age. So in terms of practicality of the age, Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago when they saw it was going to get more complicated. Fast forward to 2020, almost 2024. How many distractions do we have? Can we go to the mountains and even begin to practice the impersonal, austere? No, we can't. It's not practical at all. So definitely in terms of the setting that we're in, and we cannot really leave, bhakti is definitely also reasonable.
Right, you can't even go into a jungle or a mountain anyways without hearing a jet going over your head these days.
It wouldn't be responsible to. Krishna doesn't want us to abandon our responsibilities and just go find, go to the North Pole or whatever. Eileen.
So I'm not sure how to articulate this question, so I'm just going to kind of do it stream of consciousness. So coming from a different religious background, and like, you know, we see lots and lots of people that have like pure devotion to, so my parents are super Catholic. They have pure devotion to God. And they actually kind of like, they have a personal devotion. Like they, you know, in the Christian, the Catholic faith, Jesus came down, he became a person. They view him as, you know, that form. And I guess I wonder, like, you know, the beautiful thing about bhakti is we're not like, we're the best and we're the only way and you have to do this or else you're going to hell, because that's not what we believe. But I always wonder, like, if you have somebody that has like pure devotion in their own right, right? Like they're not chanting Hare Krishna though, but they're living a life of devotion to God in the way that their path has taken them. Is there a way for them to escape birth and death, or do they just get like a really good get out of jail free card in the next life? Like, what's the thought process behind that? Because now that we're talking about like what's the best way, like this is the best way, and I personally believe that because I've seen the differences, like I've seen the transformation. So for me, like, yes. But I'm just curious, like, about people who are just so devout, like what happens to them, and what is a bhakti's take or Prabhupada's take on that?
Very, very clear. So like I mean, let's take a hypothetical person, right? And you can picture them in your mind and you can answer for me. Is that person, is this person in a spiritual tradition that wasn't just like invented? It's like an actual spiritual tradition that, like, you know, there's a lot of like cults and weird stuff. Like I can invent anything I wanted to, and people do sometimes. Are they in, they're not dealing with that. They're actually dealing with like a tradition that was founded to actually approach God sincerely. Yeah, okay. Are they thinking about God ever? Are they praying? Are they trying to dedicate some of their work to God? Do they have some devotion to God? So if it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, it's a duck. Krishna is talking in Bhagavad Gita about the non-sectarian science of bhakti. You can't escape it. This is why people do this. Because we're made for that. This is why there are different traditions and different languages at different times, because this is what we are. We're made for devotion. And so over and over and over again, he presents himself, right? It's not just that 5,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago or today or tomorrow. It's like over and over and over again. And so it's our job to differentiate between fraudulent imposters, you know, who are like trying to make money or attention, and finding authentic messages. That's our business. We have to do that. And at the same time, there are so many sincere devotees in the planet, actually. There are always so many sincere devotees because it's very simple. It's who we are. And if you get distracted from that and you devote yourself to money or video games or drugs and sex or whatever, you're still devoting to something. You're just taking your nature and you're misapplying it. But it's actually very encouraging, I think. I find it personally very encouraging that when we understand the science of bhakti, we can see it. We can see it. You know, when we see somebody sincerely submitting themselves in prayer, I mean, that's called vandanam in Sanskrit. And I'm sure there's an Arabic word and an English word and a Hebrew word. And, you know, it's just the soul cries out. That's prayer, you know? And so when someone's doing that sincerely, even if they don't exactly know who they're calling out to, but they know there's something out there and they're calling out, that's vandana, that's prayer. That's a kind of bhakti. It's actually one of the 9 main processes of bhakti, prayer. You know, you can put your head down on a Muslim prayer mat, or you can like go to a Hindu shrine, or you can, if prayer is there, then it's bhakti. Simple as that. And prayer, of course, means you're calling out to another person. There's someone who can hear you, even if you're not sure who that person is. So it's actually less confusing than we think. It's actually more simple. I also feel a lot of loyalty and love for this tradition. And it's the beautiful thing is that the more I see of Bhagavad Gita and this tradition that inspires me, the more that I can find truth in other traditions. It doesn't make me feel like, oh, I can just ditch Bhagavad Gita because it's all the same. It's like, in a way that it is all the same, but in another way, I didn't find this kind of clear instruction anywhere else personally. I don't find the same flavor. I don't find the same, you know, feature of Krishna exactly. So I like that, and that's fine. And that's actually like totally okay. It's okay for anyone to have their own relationship with God. we honor that, and we should honor our own relationship and not sell it out or be ashamed of it, that it should be something else because someone else is doing it in a different way, or we need them to change and be exactly like us. It's actually, I find it reassuring because when I have conversations with people who are practicing in their tradition, because I understand by the grace of, you know, my teachers like my guru and Srila Prabhupada and others, I understand how bhakti is universal. I can see them, I can talk to them about their prayer practice and how they're working for God and how they're seeing the divine in other people and dealing with money and the body and the world and nature differently because of their practice. And I'm like, yeah, I can relate to that. Let's have a conversation. And it's all actually on that level, even if the language is different or whatever. So Prabhupada was really clear that I have not come to teach you how to do something else. I've come to remind you of what you're forgetting or not applying or misapplying. And, you know, here it is in the Krishna Bhakti context. You can take that, or you can take that back to your, you know, your original context and deepen your Christianity, your Islamic practice, whatever it may be. Great, no problem. Go for it. Either is great.
Thank you. That made me tear up.
Thank you. All right, let's continue with this chapter. So texts 8 through 12 are what I call, what many people have called the yoga ladder. So Krishna has said, but if you think about me and you're devoted to me, you work for me, I take care of you, I help you cross the ocean of birth and death. Okay. Now, in verses 8 through 12, he's going to talk, especially 8 through 11, he's going to give a series of different instructions at different levels. Just like in a ladder, on a ladder, you climb from one rung to the next. And you're trying to get from the lowest to the highest, right? You're trying to get to the roof or whatever you're aiming at. But you can't usually get there without going through all the rungs. So what Krishna is going to do is in reverse order. He's going to give the highest instruction. Then he's going to say, if you can't do that, then do this. If you can't do that, then at least do this much, right? So we'll go through this yoga ladder. So in the 8th verse, he gives the highest instruction, the best goal, the most challenging and most perfect complete instruction. Okay, here it is, 12:8. Mayyeva man adhatsva may buddhim niveshya nivasishyasi mayyeva at utthanga samshayah. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. So he's basically saying, think of me all the time. Engage your intelligence in me all the time. Be always residing in me in Krishna consciousness. That's the best thing you can do. So in a way, that instruction alone can be the totality of our instructions around devotional practice. But in another way, it's not really a very merciful thing if your teacher gives you like you know, you go to your grade 3 math class and they're teaching you like theoretical calculus. It's like, yeah, theoretical calculus includes everything, including 1 + 1 = 2. But if you don't hold their hand and help them see how 1 + 1 = 2, you're not a very good teacher, and they're never going to get to theoretical calculus, you know? So Krishna's saying, literally think of me all the time. Engage yourself completely in me. And we can understand and intellectually accept, yeah, that's the goal. And I want to get there, can't do it yet. I literally can't think of him all the time. Am I like excluded? Is it over for me? No, of course not. Next verse. Krishna knows this too. This is not just, you know, he's not just laying out some fanatical ideology, like just do this. 12:9. If you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So if means, it doesn't mean that the highest goal changes. You know, just like in the math class, if you can't do theoretical calculus, then do this less complicated thing. It doesn't mean that just because you're doing like a slightly less complicated kind of math, there is nothing higher. No, you have to know what the goal is. As long as you don't change that goal, it's okay if you can't do it all the way. And so here he gives it the second level. Okay, if you can't think of me all the time, develop a desire for me. By what? Abhyasa. This word has come up earlier. Abhyas means repetition or practice. The practice of bhakti. The practice of bhakti. Before bhakti in perfection, there's bhakti in practice. So many of us are actually mainly on this level. This is actually a very practical level. But so does that make sense? It's like, okay, I'm practicing to think of Krishna all the time by chanting a certain amount every day, right? And this devotional practice of regulatedly chanting a certain amount every day, offering all of my food, for example, before I eat it, I offer it in devotion. That doesn't mean that I want to do it all the time. Sometimes, maybe when I'm offering food, I'm thinking like, I really wish I would just eat right now. The tongue is like demanding, I want to just eat right now. But I'm like, no, I won't do that. I'm going to practice offering this back. And some other times I actually feel like I want to offer it. So whether you feel or you don't feel, you practice anyway. That's what practice means. You know, whether you feel like it or you don't feel like it, you brush your teeth at night before you go to bed or in the morning, you know, that's what practice means. And you do that for long enough, if it's actually good for you, you develop a desire for it. I always give the example, when I was a kid, I did not want to brush my teeth, ever. Didn't want to do it. But I can't not do it now because I've developed a taste for it. But thanks Mom, I had to practice. She had to like, know you're doing this to me, right? Know you're going to school. Know you're not eating all your Halloween candy in one night on October 31st. Not going to happen. You're rationing it out. So practice. So this is why we have regulated practice. Under guidance, we receive like how much can I actually do in a day? And how and when can I increase that in a practical way? So I'm moving towards the goal and developing a desire, right? I don't want to under endeavor, so I'm like so unchallenged that it's like a breeze and I'm not even really trying and I'm not growing, right? Like going to the gym and like, yeah, I'm lifting weights. Check it out. Lifting this mouse. Feel the burn. Like, no, that's a joke. At the same time, if I go to the gym and I try to bench press 400 pounds, I'll either injure myself or I'll become so discouraged that I won't go back because I can't even budge this thing, right? There's no momentum. I have no hope. So I just think I'm useless. I'm so bad. I can't do this. So we have to find manageable amounts and do it in such a way that it increases our desire for him. That's the thing about Krishna. We're not just practicing like mundane things. We're practicing approaching the all-attractive Supreme, which means he's going to attract us. We're giving ourselves a chance to become attracted by sincerely being present and letting him attract us through his all-attractive qualities in his name and in our practice in other ways. Mama Chapman, then you develop a desire for him. That's how you can think of him constantly. You can think of someone constantly, how? When you're in love with them. When you're in love, you know, you have a partner, you have a child, you know, you have a friend who you're like very, very close to. You can't not think about them. You wake up, they're there. You go to sleep, you dream about them. Like, if we can do that for someone in this world, we can definitely do that for the all-attracted. We're made for that. We're made for being attracted. We're made for connection. And Krishna is saying, okay, before you have fallen in love with me, practice getting to know me. Practice becoming attracted to me. Then you'll want to think of me all the time, naturally. Right? Make sense? And it doesn't end there. However, if you can't do this, verse 10, if you can't do this, abhyase pismartosi, if you can't practice this practice, this repetition, mat karma paramopava, if you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, then try to work for me. By working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. The idea is that at every level of the yoga ladder, we do as much of the highest level as we can. And if we can't do, until we can't do anymore, then we go to a lower level and we try to fill up with that. Until we can't do any more of that, then we go to a lower level and fill up with that. It's like, if you have like a jar, right? You have a bunch of things to put in the jar. You put the big things first until they won't fit anymore. Then you put like the little pebbles. Then you put the grains of sand. And that way you fit it up. You fill it up. So we try to think of Krishna all the time, but we only have so much desire to do that. So then we take a regulated practice. But we only have so much qualification for that. Maybe we don't have, maybe we're pretty new to bhakti. We can't really chant more than like a couple minutes every day. So then what is he saying? Are you plumb out of luck? No, work for me. So you're doing stuff with your body, you're doing stuff in the world, you're like at a job, you have your family, you have all these duties, spiritualize them, right? Deal with your family as my part and parcel. Go to work and then use what you're doing at work, connect it to me. Like use some of that money you're bringing home for spiritual things, spiritualize your home, spiritualize what you eat, donate some money to a spiritual cause, work for me. There's some things you can do like that. So you can't even practice, you can't chant Hare Krishna all day, you can't like practice bhakti all the time, and you fill up the rest of your time with spiritualized work, honest work dedicated to him. And if you can't do that, he says, if you're unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all the results of your work and try to be self-situated. Verse 11. And this is a really beautiful purport. Prabhupada says, it may be that one is, I'll just share the screen here, you can read along too, 12:11. It may be that one is unable even to sympathize with the activities of the Krishna consciousness movement because of societal, familial, or religious considerations or some other impediment. If one attaches himself directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objections from family members or so many other difficulties. For one who has such a problem, it is advised that he sacrifice the accumulated result of his activities to some good cause. Thus, one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, they give up the hard-earned results of their activities. This is also recommended here because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, the results of one's activities, one is sure to purify their mind gradually. And in that purified state of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. The idea is that if you can't do anything else, just don't be a miser. Don't be greedy. Don't live this life like it's just for you. Even if all you can do is like, I can't chant Hare Krishna, I can't spiritualize, I don't get any of that, but at least like I'm going to give to charity, I'm going to do something. That's a start, he's saying here. Yeah, be humanitarian, be nice. Why? It softens the heart, it purifies the mind. The universe is actually laid out this way. Like, why do you think that when people become parents, they become more responsible? Is it just magic? No, it's higher design. It's like, oh yeah, you wanted to like have a partner and have kids and like have a romantic life. Cool. Here's like the results of that. You get to actually dedicate yourself to another person's well-being. And they won't even thank you for the first few years. How about that? But you're so in love with them, you'll do it anyway. Great. You just recognize that that's what this universe is for becoming less selfish. Because we're all supposed to go that way. And if you're really, really stubborn, you don't give anything back, you don't do anything for anyone other than yourself, you're just completely going against the flow of the whole system. So if you can't do anything else, just don't do that. Just be a little bit generous, give. Even if you're not giving to God, just give. And don't profit from it. Just give because it's right to give. So this is totally relatable. Actually, anybody who's been on the planet for long enough will tell you this is true, that we get more purpose from giving than we get from receiving. Don't be greedy. And this is like, grandmother wisdom. This is like kindergarten stuff. So bhakti is like that, at least. And if you can do more, then do it for the Supreme. Give to the Supreme. And if you can do more than just spiritualizing your activities and your money and your work, then take up a practice, an abhyas. Repeatedly practice every day the practices of bhakti until you develop a spontaneous desire to think of them all the time. So this is the yoga ladder. And I think this is a good time to pause. There's a lot in this. It's a very, very practical thing. So we'll stop here for, I think, the week, and we'll take any reflections or comments on anything within the 12th chapter, especially these last few verses on the yoga ladder, what these different rungs are, or any clarification, or just what stood out to you. how did it feel? Here's a question. How did it feel to receive clear rungs, clear levels?
It felt great. It felt really good. I wanted to say something. Tracy wanted to say something.
Yes.
I love how you said before bhakti and perfection is bhakti in practice.
Yeah.
I love that. And there's the phrase is escaping me, but something about love, and we have to like, it's not practice loving in order to experience love, but it's like you have to put in effort and work, and sometimes you have to do the prescribed things that say will lead towards love, right, or lead towards growth, and that's the practice part, you know, that you were speaking about. But and if I think of the phrase that it's escaping me, I'll put it in the chat. Maybe, do you know something about love for love's sake or something like this?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. But yeah, I love that. Very simply put, that before bhakti and perfection is bhakti in practice. And
Thank
Tracy.
you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I really appreciated the discussion about, you know, bhakti being universal and how it can
Mhm.
be translated and accepted and, you know, understood when we kind of apply it, and it's not that we get missing different practices, but it's all in devotional service. And it doesn't
I'm
matter.
having trouble hearing you because you're kind of at the back of the room. You're saying about, yeah, maybe move closer.
Coming closer. Take two.
Um,
Come even closer.
I said that I appreciated the discussion about bhakti being universal and how it can apply regardless of what religion or spirituality that you follow. How you can genuinely have a conversation with someone when they, you know, can understand what it is to have a devotional practice and, you know, living the life that they understand and the religion that they understand. I just feel like that's, you know, having the flexibility. I think that's like really important, which a lot of
Yeah.
religion doesn't feel like you have the flexibility. So
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. It's a sign of mature spiritual realization when you don't need to convert anybody, and they don't need to convert you. That's a conversation that's actually respectful, and you can learn a lot. You can grow, and so can they. And you can, without like, you don't have. It doesn't mean you have to. You suddenly abandon your loyalties, or they do. It's like you deepen. You know. So, oh, look how Krishna has manifested in this other sincere practitioner's life. Like, I'm not going to suddenly become, you know, a practitioner of their line, but I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like at this time, place, and circumstance, Krishna manifested in this tradition. And that's actually a lot like what this, it reminds me of this thing from my tradition. And here's another way to deepen that. And actually I feel connected to this person and they understand me, and there's less misunderstanding and sectarianism that way. I've always found it really reassuring that there are so many devotees in the planet. It's actually much less, things are much less divided than we tend to make them because of our own like lower level immature understanding. There's actually a lot of really sincere people, like the majority of the planet is full of sincere practitioners of bhakti, really. And most of the rest of the people are not like, you know, horns on their head demons who are trying to like, they're out for God. They're just kind of like stuck in the material rut and don't have time for spirituality. Or so they think. They're just kind of innocent. So yeah.
Thank you.
And I think Justin had his hand up.
Yeah, no, just to touch on that, like if you really look into it, you see bhaktis in all sorts of religions. You see people devotionally serving their church or God through their own way. And that's the cool thing about the universal form, that Krishna will present himself in so many different ways and so many different avenues that it works for everybody. There's a route for everybody, and there's not necessarily a wrong way to get there. But you know, I growing up in a Christian family, and then, you know, kind of going into an agnostic Christian faith for most of my adulthood, and then finding the Gita was like, hey, look, here's the user manual I've been looking for my whole life. Awesome. So, you know, but anyways, I wanted to just touch base on the rung system, like as you were saying, the rung yoga. system that like there's days where I just can't chant 16 rounds or more, or my voice is broken up, or I'm feeling not well. So what you do is you go next to the next level. What can I do today to spiritualize what I'm doing? Is it, even though if I'm laying in bed or if I'm working a 19-hour day, how am I spiritualizing this? Well, I'm serving my people, because I can see there's the spark in all of us. We're all have that spark, that super soul within us that harnesses Krishna. So when you serve someone else, you're still doing that devotional work, even though you're not chanting Maha Mantra every moment of the day. So it's really good to kind of have those like if you can't do it, there's this you can do, and you're still being a bhakti, and you're still accumulating that growth. So just want to point that out.
Thank you. Yeah, particularly if you're consciously doing it. If you're choosing to connect the activity or the service directly, like as much as you can consciously. Everything is better if you consciously do it. Like if you chant kind of like under your breath, not paying attention, it's better than not chanting. But if you chant it attentively, it's even better. So if you can't even chant, but you're like, okay, but I'm at work, I have to do this work. I'm going to practice seeing these people as part and parcel of Krishna. I'm going to practice dealing with them that way. I'm going to spiritualize my work. So I'm doing this work for him, for his parts and parcels. And you're deliberately spiritualizing that work. That's really effective, actually. Thank you.
I will go. Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Samyaprasa. I'm happy to be here. I was just going to say that it's such a nice counterpoint, this chapter, to the universal form, is that's like Krishna's this huge, crazy thing that, Arjuna was like, I can't even believe this. And it was just blew his mind. And then now he's I like how Krishna brings it back down, or it's written that, okay, now I showed you something so unbelievable, but now I'm going to show you how it can be practical. I'm going to show you, the lungs of the ladder. And like, I want to piggyback sort of on what Justin said, that some days we are feeling so, fired up, and yes, I can chant and I can do this and fix your mind. And then other days, I think that's just part of being in the material world, that you just like, if I can just chant my rounds and, I'm following the regulative principles, but that's from Krishna. He's telling us how we can get closer to him in a practical way, getting to know me. So I like this. I'm sad it had to end tonight, but I realized that we'd be reading till like midnight. But yeah, it's really good. And then the last one, the 12:10, when it just said, be kind, be a humanitarian, really taking your bhakti, your Krishna consciousness out into the world, and know that we're all part and parcel of Krishna. And if that's what you can do, then that's something you're practicing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just was really nice. I like the reflections too. Thank you.
Thank you. I find it very encouraging, because you're never out of the game. Krishna doesn't want you to be out of the game. It's not like, oh, you're not good enough, go away. Humans can do that to each other. We can do that to ourselves, but Krishna's not about that. So he's actually like very accommodating. There's a story of Prabhupada's guru, very exalted devotee, Bhaktisiddhanta. He was on a pilgrimage. He was walking through a holy place with some of his disciples, who many of them are also sannyasis, swamis, like very advanced devotees in their own right. And they're practicing devotional service at a very high level every day, right? And as a guru, he could understand the hearts and minds of his followers. So they're walking and they're passing through this pilgrimage site, and there were some people begging for money or food, right? And his disciples were chanting very attentively Hare Krishna and ignored these beggars. And you gotta understand, Bhaktisiddhanta was never like, yeah, bhakti is really just the same thing as being charitable. No, he was actually giving like a very, very high message of pure devotion for God, right? But he stopped and he turned around to his disciples and he said, did anybody give to them? They said, no, we're chanting. And he said, bhakti means to soften your heart. Did you even notice that they were there? Right? He could understand that there was a certain amount of entitlement, of hard-heartedness that had developed in those disciples, and he called them out like, yeah, I've not made you disciples so you could just like be nice materialists and piously give your money away, but you didn't even notice them. Like didn't even register as human for you. Like bhakti doesn't just like step over being a nice person. Like still do that, still have a soft heart, because what are you going to give Krishna otherwise? You're going to give him your hard heart? He doesn't want that. So just to kind of substantiate that point a little bit, is that ultimately we're trying to give a soft heart to him, but we want it to be soft after all, not just like some diamond thing that we just like, it's like so selfish and greedy. He doesn't want that. So thank you.
Eileen has her hand up.
Yes, Eileen.
So I just wanted to kind of express some gratitude. So I met, there's a beautiful second initiated devotee that does Pujari service. And he was talking to me about, kind of reflected on this a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the prison system. And when he goes in to spread Krishna consciousness, he starts with the bottom rung. And I didn't quite, it made sense to me, but it just made more sense tonight that like, he doesn't go in with the Gita. He doesn't go in with like chanting. He goes in to help people find purpose. And that's how he's distributing bhakti. It's this kind, gentle first rung. It's not just about you. Let me help you find your purpose, because through your purpose, you'll find the divine, and through the divine, you'll find bhakti, right? And my gratitude is like, Kelly, 4 years ago, you did that for me. And it was that gentle, sweet, universal kind of love that this isn't just about you. So I just want to express my gratitude because you've lived the words that Prabhupada has put here to kind of look at that ladder and be kind and help soften people to find their purpose, then to find Krishna.
Yeah, that's the benefit you have when you have a little more time with people. You can be patient with them and give them a chance to see kind of the more lower level practical things and apply it in their life until they develop a taste. And they start asking questions, gaps open up in their life they want to fill with some practice, or they have some teachable moment and they're like, wait a minute, what's that chanting or whatever. They come to a kirtan. When they're ready, then things get thicker and more personal and more, next thing you know, they're in a Bhagavad Gita class. So that's how they get you. Thank you.
You think you're going on a yoga retreat.
All right. Now you can see why this is one of my favorite chapters, right? It's a short chapter. We're already 2/3. We only got 11 verses in. We're almost done the chapter, but there's just so much there, actually. It's simple for the simple, but there's a lot to be said about it. So if there's no more comments, questions, or reflections, well, let's see if there is, first of all. Anything else?
I just wanted to share just a little quick something that's kind of been coming up pretty frequently. I was raised Protestant and really just never stuck, but kind of went through the motions. And then I'm sort of getting to know someone that might be a potential partner, and he was raised Catholic and sort of has lost sort of that part of his like childhood, but does mention like coming to like prayer again. So it's just a nice reminder that even though he might not be practicing like bhakti per se, there's a part of him that once existed. And I think it's just like really a nice reminder for me as someone that's just continuing to practice, bhakti with myself, and then to see like, oh, right, everyone's having their own relationship with God, or divinity, however that looks. And the one thing he asked me was, we were on a hike, and he said, is there like a bhakti or like a Hindu version of like, let's say like Noah's Ark? And I was like, I'm not familiar, but like, I'll look it up. And then sure enough, I was looking, like doing some research on this. And at the time that Noah's Ark or that flood happened, there's actually in Hinduism, or a story related to, again, this huge flood, but instead of an ark and Noah, there's like Manu and a fish, and they actually happened what would have been at the same time, but just in different places or something like that. And it was like for me, it was, I was also be able to experience through his question all of the parallels between all like these religions, because again, everyone has different tastes. We can't all expect everyone to fall in love with a little blue boy. but that's why we have so many other tastes and other flavors and varieties, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, that pastime is given in the 8th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Satyavrata Muni and the Matsya Avatar, saving the Vedas, giant flood. Actually, historically speaking, there's a lot of kind of cross-cultural evidence of floods. A lot of different traditions have talked about it. It's a big deal when it happens, so they've commemorated it. And it's not just one thing; it's floods have happened over and over again. But yeah, it's nice to see those symmetries. Anything else?
Just thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Samyaprasa, for your wisdom and your humor, and your reaching your arm around your head to find the complicated way and then showing us the easy way.
Right.
And for your sincerity and devotion to your own path and sharing with
Thank
us.
you.
Mhm.
Thanks a lot. Mercy of my gurus. Justin has his hands up.
Sorry, Prabhu, I did not have my hand up.
Okay, no problem.
He was throwing his hands in the air saying, Jaya.
All right. So for this week, read up till the 11th verse of the 12th chapter. And you can read as many purports as you want, and just at least read the verses, and leave a note in the WhatsApp thread, some reflection, anything that stood out, or a question or comment. Those are always ecstatic to read, really loving them, and guaranteed, even if it feels like it's like whatever in your head or heart, it's going to feel fresh to other people. And so thanks for sharing that. And yeah, we're going on. We're halfway through chapter 12 now. And yeah, what a wonderful sangha and collection of questions and reflections today. So thank you for that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Next week I'll be there in person.
Next week he'll be here in person, Saturday, 12-hour kirtan at the Bhakti House.
That's right. 12-hour kirtan in that very room on
This
Saturday.
very room.
Maybe
And-
you can broadcast it so people can tune in.
That's a great idea.
And then they can, they can like wash their dishes while they're hearing us chant Hare Krishna or whatever.
That's a great idea. Okay. And Amy loves that idea. And if anyone wants to stay to sing the Damodar Astakam together and go to your altar and light a candle, we'll do that again, but we'll stop the recording now.
Yes. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Bhakti Yoga ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. See you next week.